Hello, this is a tutorial on macro use in Roll20. I'm not going to show you everything that macros can do today, but I will show you some macros that might make your life easier, ranging from simple to moderate levels of complexity. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know that all the information that I know about macros comes from the Roll20 wiki, these two sites that are referenced here. This macros page that shows you how to make macros and how to use them in different ways, and this dice reference page which shows you how many different things you can do with Roll20's dice rather than just rolling a single polyhedron plus or minus a bonus. Now, normally in Roll20, when you make a dice roll, one thing you could do is type slash roll 1d20, like so, and it does it for you. But typing takes a little bit of time. So wouldn't it be nice if for your attacks that all use the same bonus, you had a macro that you just click a button and it does it for you. Now that's all well and good. It gives you, at the click of a button, 2 dice rolls or more. But if you use this macro multiple times, you filled the entire chat and it gets a bit big and clunky. And there's so much more that you could be doing with it. Before I show you how to make different kinds of macros, I would like to show you a couple of my macros that I use and that I really like. This first one belongs to my druid, Shona, who has an animal companion, and her animal companion, if you don't know, she gets a +4 to handle animal checks when interacting with her animal companion. So when I roll her handle animal, I have this little window pop up that asks me whether she's using handle animal on her companion Sarah or not. I can say yes, and it'll put in the +4 bonus for me, or no. Then I have a character, Lily, who's an intelligence-based arcane caster, but kind of cooler. And she has a rank in every knowledge skill, but she has different bonuses for each of them because not all of them are class skills, and she puts different numbers of ranks in them, and she has trait bonuses to certain knowledges. So I don't like looking them all up. I want to have one macro for all my knowledges, plus her familiar gets to roll knowledges too, because familiars share skill ranks with their casters. So I have this one macro, I press the button, it enrolls all my knowledges for both Lily and her familiar Jiwoo, and my GM can just say, okay, I'm looking for local, it's right there, that's Lily's, that's Jiwoo's, and he just ignores all the other dice rolls. Best and most common macro that is used, or the most useful macro, I suppose, would be this advanced attack macro that asks me whether or not I'm flanking, if I'm using power attack, whether I charged or not, and reminds me to keep my AC low if I charged. And any other miscellaneous modifiers, like if there's Bless or Bane going on, that modify my attack. And then it also rolls my damage. I power attack, so I say yes, and there was a buff happening. And it rolls both of them in this nice little purple window, and it's a lot less space than that. And I got all of these at the click of a button. So, first we'll go into where you can find your macros. That's all the way over here at this little settings button. And it says it right at the top. If you don't have any macros yet, your My Settings will be way up here. This area expands when you add more macros. So we've got our first macro here. I'm going to show you what you can do with macros. You can use it for plain text, and when you're using a macro, when you're making a macro, it's important to save changes when you like the result of your macro, but also to test your macro before you use it to see if it's working. Maybe you forget a space somewhere. You want to do that, and you like the way that looks better. There's show as token action, which basically if you check this and you have a token on the board, which the character I will be using for this example is Mishimizu Hinata here. Oops. So if I have this show as token action and I select your token, it pops up here on this upper bar, and that's for it's most useful for initiative, which you can only roll when you have a token selected, to not have it down here and then you click it without selecting your token. So that's good. For GMs, this section here is you can make a macro for your players who maybe are not as macro savvy and show it to all your players. And then of course there's this delete macro down here. Now, along with having plain text, you can also put commands in here, such as /me, like so, or you can have it roll dice, like this. You can have it roll multiple dice, multiple different dice. We'll do it all in a row. But like I said, this takes up a lot of space. And so there's a way you can put your dice rolls in this little yellow box that I think makes the numbers stick out more to a GM, and it saves a lot more space, and that is by surrounding it in double brackets, like so. And then you get that nice little yellow number. And it doesn't just have to be one dice. You could roll, you know, 3d6, and that'll work. Or you could put in bonuses. You can have math happen in there. It's all very nice. It all gets added in there. And then for these yellow dice, you can mouse over them to see what exactly is happening or going on, because this has a green around it that says a crit success, but 3 dice were rolled, and we can mouse over and see that only 1 was a crit success. And then we can see that these were added properly and what the original dice is. So that's the basics of what a macro is and what you can do with it. Now I'm going to show you some of my favorite macros. Oh yes, and if you want your macros down in this bar, you can click this in bar button, and that puts it there so you can roll it. I didn't save my dummy macro, so it just has plain text. That's the last time I saved it. And if you want to see these buttons, you got to make sure you have Show Macro Quick Bar selected. And if you don't have macros in the bar, like if you have too many, another way to invoke them is to use a number sign and then start typing the macro. And it'll have a drop down. You can select it, or you can just finish typing it out. If you have multiple macros that start with the same letter, it'll pull down all of them. It'll start with the same chain of letters. But I tend to forget about macros that I don't have in my bar, so I try to just have macros that I need. So one of my most useful macros is this Roll20 macro right here. It's /me rolls, and then in double brackets d20 plus question mark curly bracket modifier line 0, and then end curly bracket end double brackets. What this is going to do is when I roll this, it's going to ask me to input a number to add to my d20. So let's say my GM asks me to roll for stealth, but I don't have a stealth macro. I can use this to still roll stealth very easily without having to type an entire command and tell my GM what I'm doing it for. So we go into my character sheet. I've been asked to roll for stealth, so I go all the way down here. My stealth modifier is -2. So we put in -2. And then if we continue the macro, I continue the sentence for question mark curly bracket reason. See that right here. This is part before the line is the name of the variable, and then this is what is going to pop up in the box by default. So I would change this to stealth, because that's what the GM asked me to roll, and I have my caps lock key on, but that's okay. So we submit that, and it looks nice and tidy right there. Kiona Girl rolls a 16 for stealth. Let's say my GM wants me to roll something else, Knowledge Arcana. I'll show you how fast this is in real time. For Arcana. And it would take much longer for me to type out this entire string. It would take up much more space if I just rolled the d20. So this is very nice and simple. It's what I have at the very beginning of my macro hotbar at all times. It is my most used macro. And if you leave them blank, you're just rolling a d20 for no reason, which is nice. So let's use this macro one more time to roll diplomacy, which right here I have a +5 at. So we test our macro, and I have a +5, and I'm rolling diplomacy. Uh-oh, it came up as a 0. That's because I put a plus in there when there's already a plus in the macro. The double plus errors out the macro and it will always come out to a 0. The good thing about this is that you can mouse over this yellow bit and see what exactly the dice rolled. So you see I rolled a 16 and I have a +5, so I can tell the GM that the result is a 21. They can look and confirm that. But please try to remember that if you already have a plus in there, don't put a plus. But if you have a negative modifier, minuses are okay. So that's the first very useful macro. Second macro that's not quite as useful, but still kind of nice to have around, depending on your campaign, is Secret Roll20, which sends a roll to a GM. And I usually just keep it to a d20, because it's usually all you need. And this is useful for things that maybe you don't want the other players to know about, or rolls that have to be done in secret. For example, knowledge rolls. If everyone's rolling knowledge, different people are going to ask about different things, and so not everybody knows that everybody else knows what the monster is, or doesn't know what the culture is like in the area. So maybe your GM has you roll knowledge as a secret, or maybe you want to pickpocket one of your party members and they tell you to roll sleight of hand. So we find our sleight of hand here for my lawful good inquisitor. She has a -2, so put that in there, and that's what the GM, it just goes to the GM, and this yellow box is for whispers as well. I am the GM in this campaign, so I'm the only one who sees these messages, but trust me, it works. So that's secret roll. Sometimes I'll have that in a hotbar, but usually I just use that as a GM when I need to roll dice that the players can't see. Next we have a standard skill check macro. These are macros you want to use, you want to make for skills that you use, or abilities that you use very frequently, like perception. If you're a druid, you want to have handle animal. If you're the one who identifies all of the magic items in the campaign, you're going to want to have one for spellcraft. So I have this little flavor bit, the /me looks around and listens. Then I have my double brackets, d20 +6, because that is my perception modifier as Shimizu Hinata. And then I always try to have a + miscellaneous mods 0, because maybe the room is really dark and you have a penalty, or you're listening for the sounds of combat and so you have a bonus because it's really loud. And you always want to be able to modify your rolls rather than just having to have the GM do mental maths of say, oh, add 6 onto that, or whatever. So we want to test this macro, make sure it works. I'm asleep, so I have a -10. And I'm not waking up. You see, I rolled a 4, I have a +6, but I have a -10, so my perception is 0. I'm probably not noticing anything. So yeah, these are good ones to have in your hotbar. But remember, we have that Roll20 macro that, in case you don't, there's not room in your hotbar for every single skill. And so you use your Roll20 for stuff that you don't roll as much. Like, my Inquisitor with Disable Device, she's never going to be using Disable Device unless the rogue dies. And everyone else in the party dies, because she has a -2 and she should not be rolling Disable Device. So that's our skill macro. I'm going to show you a bit more complicated of a feature that's very useful. It makes those purple boxes, and they're called templates. I call them tables because that's kind of what it looks like, because you've got, if I can scroll up here, you got a little title, and then you got these little quadrants. They're very cute. And so this is a default template, and what I find it the most useful for is for weapon attacks and damage rolls. So we have and in curly brackets template : default. There's a way to have custom tables, but your GM needs to be subscribed to Roll20, and they need to know how to code in Roll20's API and stuff, which I don't know how to do. But anyway, so you and temple : and curly brackets template : default. Double curly brackets name equals whatever you want it to be. For this one, I've just put in default weapon. Then you have another double curly brackets for each line in the template that you want. So this one will give me 2 lines. On the left it will say attack and damage, and on the right it will roll a d20 and a d8. Let's test that out. Yep, right there. So you have name, weapon, it says weapon right there. Attack equals d20, so I have attack on the left and equals d20 on the right. We've got damage equals d8, and we've got an 8 right there on the right. That's crit success and damage on the left. So these are very customizable. You can add more lines if you want. I have a player in one of my games who gets a free intimidate check every time he hits, so he has another line for his intimidate check, and then he doesn't want to re-roll the entire macro for a crit success, so he just adds another line for an extra attack roll in case the top one crits. So yeah, they're very versatile. You know, someone can put in their sneak attack damage on an extra line in case sneak attack happens. Really whatever you want. Macros are very, very customizable. So I'll show you Shimizu's attack. She has katana right up here. So we have our name of the template is katana, or the name of the table is katana. Her attack, we have her roll a d20 plus 4 because that is her melee attack bonus. 1 plus her strength modifier, which if we go up here is 3. And then I always, again, add that miscellaneous modifier in case I'm flanking or charging or there are buffs going on. And then for damage, I usually say what type of damage it is, just in case DR is going on. And then she has a katana, so she deals d8 plus 3 because she one-hands it, and again, for miscellaneous modifiers. So let's say we have a plus 3 to attack and a plus 2 to damage. So we miscellaneous modifier, plus 3 to attack, but it didn't ask me about my damage, it just applied the plus 3 to both. That's because when I named this variable inquiry, I named them both the same thing, so it will apply it to both inquiries. So what is smart to do is name them separate things, like miscellaneous attack and miscellaneous damage. Now when I roll it, I have a plus 3 to attack and a plus 2 to damage. I can enter them separately, and it works out just fine. So we're going to save that, because we like it. Now, Shimizu Hinata is only level 2, so she doesn't have a full round attack yet. But I have another character I've imported that does have a full round attack. He is a horse named Tetsu, which means he gets a bite attack and 2 hooves. He's fucking badass because he's a level 13 mount that belongs to a samurai. So he has quite a high melee attack bonus, high base attack bonus, but it doesn't give him extra attacks because he's using natural attacks, but that doesn't really matter. He's got 3 attacks. So I made this full attack macro for him, which now we're starting to look very complicated. But really all this is 3 separate templates. I just keep them together because I want to save space when it gets rolled, because otherwise it will enter twice before rolling the second one, just like you have in the macro. The macro will translate exactly to the chat, however you type it. So our first template is our bite attack. We have d20 plus 14, which is right there. And that's bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. He's d4 plus 6 damage, because he has a strength of 22, because he's a crazy horse. And then we have our miscellaneous attack and damage in here. And then we have hoof 1 and hoof 2, which are pretty identical. They have attack, d20 plus 4. Shouldn't be d20 plus 4, it should be d20 plus 14. So that brings those down there. d20 plus 14, bludgeoning is d6. So we've got our d6 here. And our 6 damage from our attack, or from our strength. And if you'll notice, when we test this macro, it won't ask me for attack modifiers for the bite and the hooves separately. The attack modifier that applies to the bite, or the miscellaneous one, will apply to the hooves as well, and the damage modifier that applies to the bite will also apply to the hooves as well. So if you have something that affects one attack but not others, you might want to name these miscellaneous sections separately, or put it in as a separate inquiry, or something, but otherwise it's going to apply to them all because, again, I named them the same thing. So that's Tetsu. We probably won't be going back to him. We don't really need him anymore. We'll put Hinata up here so we can see little Okami. Hi. Hi, little Okami. Alright. Oops. Alright, so we did the full attack, and I'm going to show you a feature that I just recently learned about, the Dropdown, and this is so very, very useful. What it does, it's a lot like the inquiry, but instead of having the name of the inquiry and one section where you can type something in, you have multiple sections, and those are your only options. So today I will eat, and these are just plain text ones, just to show you how it works, question mark, and then we put in curly brackets the name of the inquiry, and a line between that and each option. So we say, just macro, today I will eat food, which is the name here, and I have a choice between pizza, burger, salad, pasta, and chocolate, and I feel like chocolate today. I actually already had chocolate today. But you don't just have to have it be what you type. You can also give values or other words to names that you type in. So I have 1 + 1 equals an answer, which is true or false. If I say true, it will enter 2 because I have true and then comma, and then in double brackets I have this number. And so by separating, when you put between two vertical lines, two things, and you separate them by a comma, the first thing will be what appears in the dropdown, and the second thing will be what actually applies to the macro. So, let's say I want a false answer for what 1 + 1 equals, and I submit. Here we have our answer for the first dropdown, today I will eat chocolate, and 1 + 1 equals 11. Even though I selected false as my dropdown, false turns into 11 via this macro, so we have 11 here. So this creates a whole bunch of options. Instead of having to add all your miscellaneous modifiers in your head, you can have dropdowns like the advanced attack that ask whether you're flanking, or whether you're charging, or whether you're power attacking. And so, why don't I add that to Shimizu's attack macro? Because she has power attack. I'll show you this right down here in her feats. She's got power attack. So, I mean, she probably shouldn't, but she has it for the purposes of my argument. So, we have D20 +4. She will always have that +4 because it's her melee attack modifier. It might go up or down depending on stuff, like if she's power attacking. So we're going to put in a question mark, a curly bracket, and we are going to type power attack. Then have our line, yes, comma, and when she power attacks, she'll take a -1 to her attack. And another line, no, and that'll put in a 0. And then we'll end our curly brackets and put in our other plus so we can add our miscellaneous attack. Then for slashing, we're gonna power attack affects the damage as well. So we're going to put in question mark, start curly bracket, power attack, line, yes. If she does, that will increase her damage by 2. And if she didn't, that will do nothing to her damage. We'll end curly brackets, and again, put in our plus. And I don't know how many of you noticed the issue here, but again, I have named a variable the same thing, but given different answers. So what I want to do is change the name, so it's easily discernible what's happening. So we have our power attack and power damage. And we'll test this macro before saving it, see if it works. So, test macro. Yes, I'm power attacking. We don't have any miscellaneous modifiers. I said yes to power attacking, so we want to apply that to our damage. And again, no miscellaneous modifiers. And look at that, we have 13 + 4 -1 + 0, 3 + 3 + 2 + 0. Perfect. And let's test the other option, just to be sure. No, 0. Oops. I didn't say no to both. I'm a cheater. No. 0. Yep. So that works perfectly. It doesn't break the macro. Wonderful. We're going to save it. And like you saw with my advanced attack, I put in for flanking, I put in for charging, you could put in lots of other stuff. It doesn't just have to apply to attacks as well. Like you saw, I put it in damage. You could have a drop down for whether or not you're sneak attacking. If you have fire damage that you can turn on and off, like with an Amulet of Mighty Fists, you could have that in there. Yeah, it's really up to you how you use these. Another thing we want to talk about, especially with Shimizu, is she has a katana, and so she crits on 18 to 20, but when we're rolling dice, a natural success, let's see if I can find one with a d20, only shows up green to display a critical success. We see it with these other dice, you know, we have a d6, it'll show up as green if a 6 was rolled. We have our d8, that'll show up as green if an 8 is rolled. The same thing happens with d20. If it rolls a 20, green will show up. And that's to indicate, hey, you need to confirm this in a lot of systems. But she also confirms on an 18. And we don't have an 18 there, because that's Tetsu. But yeah, let's say this was a katana attack and it was a 19. It's not showing up as green, and we want it to, because we want it to remind us that we need to roll to confirm. There's something you can do with that as well, and it's this function right here, d20 CS greater than and whatever your number is. So if she had a king katana, it would be CS greater than 15. And if we roll this a couple times, so nat 1, there we are. We have greater than 15, so it shows up as green. We test it again. 20 shows up as 20. Course. 9 is less than 15, so it shows up as normal. So this is great for your katanas, for your falchions. I think it's falchions. Anything that has a, you know, keen weapons, improved critical feat, anything that has a greater range than, greater crit range than 20. So let's apply that to Shimizu Hinata's attack again. So we have d20 greater than 18. And you can add your other modifiers after that as well. You definitely want the 18 to be right after the d20 roll and not at the end. If you put it at the end, it will add everything together and see if that's greater than 18. We just want to know if the regular dice by itself is greater than 18, and then we can add everything else. So I'm going to save this because I know it works, but I still want to test it. And the reason I'm doing this now is because I don't know whether or not we're going to actually get something to show up as green, because last time I did this, it did not. I'm rolling all 3s. What's happening? Why are these all showing up as 3? So maybe I shouldn't have saved, because something wrong is happening. Something is messing up. Ah, yes. Forgot to put in the CS. Oops, we want that lowercase. I'm sure it doesn't matter. Yeah, this is why we test our macros before we're at the game table, because then our macro is broken. We either have to fiddle with it during the game, which everyone hates, or type everything out, which we hate. So let's try this again. Test macro. Yes, 0, yes, 0. Alright, that's an 18, but the dice roll was a 15. It's good that that's not showing up as green. Boop, 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 boop. 20, close, we got a 17, but no cigar. 19, nope, that's a 16. Try 2 more times. I got very close, but I didn't get it. But, now it's not broken. We see it has CS greater than 18, and that's the same as this CS greater than 15. So it should work, hopefully. Sadly, the dice aren't cooperating. What the heck? I'll try one more time. We'll do it the other way. #5 attack. I've numbered my macros for this video just so it's easier to access them. But you can name them however you want. There we go. Oh, that's a nat 20. So that doesn't prove my point. But yeah, I play a lot of characters that have familiars or animal companions or both, and so I'll name my macros with whoever is making the dice roll and then a dash. And so if I'm doing a macro for Shona, I'll do Shona dash perception. I would do a hashtag first. Shona. And that'll pull up all my Shona macros. Stuff like that. However you want to organize them is up to you. If you want to pull up all your skills when you're using your number sign to roll a macro, you can title them the skills, and attacks, ATK, whatever you'd like. So yeah, a couple other things. You are able to color code your macros by right-clicking on them, and you have this color. And so Shona is my druid, so we'll make hers green. Lily is my witch, and she is a black catfolk, so we'll make that one black. And the advanced attack, we're hitting someone and making them bleed, so we'll make that one red. And so now it's a lot easier to tell these apart without having to read them. Again, if you control multiple characters, multiple things, you can color code them in order to be able to tell them apart. So for Lily and her familiar, I'll color Lily's macros one thing, her familiar's macros another, and any macros that they share a third thing. Like I'll have them roll knowledge together, their perception together, or my standard Roll20, that can be for either of them. I'll have that be the mixed color. But again, you can organize them any way you want. Finally, putting them in order in your macro bar, they go in the order that you put them in. They don't automatically sort themselves alphabetically, which is great because then you can sort them how you want. I put, again, Lily's macros in one place, her familiar's macros in another, and the ones that they share in between them. And then I always have my Roll20 at the left because I love this macro. So say you make a new macro and you want it to go in the middle. You have to remove all the macros that come later and then put them in the order you want. So I like having Roll20 at the left. I like having my secret roll then. I'll put in my attack is next, most common, followed by full attack, assuming this is the same character. Then we have our skill checks. And that's all I really... Ooh, excuse me. That's all I really have for this character. So I think that's everything. Thanks for watching this video. Please check out the websites that I have mentioned here. It's a lot easier as well to copy and paste a macro rather than type it all out. If you type it all out, you're more likely to have your fingers press wrong buttons. Whereas if you copy and paste it, you'll have to go through and make sure everything is correct, whether you type it out or copy and paste it, but copying and pasting is a lot less time. And these websites have those macros in here already. And you can't really copy and paste from a video, but if you can, you are a wizard, and you need to teach me your magic. But yeah, so thank you very much for watching. I hope this makes playing D&D or Pathfinder or whatever it is you play on Roll20 a lot easier. And yeah, that's it. Bye.